Outrageous Chapter 21. After looking for a moment, Wan Ci looked away, even more determined to speak to Lu Zhi Wei that night. But before that, she might need to speak to Ying Xize. Lu Zhi Wei's warmth and sincerity made Ying Xize even more guilty and awkward. He felt that he was utterly despicable. Look, take a good look. She's such a good girl, how could you one-sidedly decide she was a man? If your eyes are useless, then just donate them, Ying Xize. Forget it, nobody would want these eyes even if they were donated. He battled with his own thoughts forlornly. Seeing that he didn't dare to happily run over and greet her as he usually did, Lu Zhi Wei felt for him and shamed the system. Lao Wu, see what troubles you guys caused. He's gonna be able to carve out Barbie's fantasy castle soon. Lao Wu pushed up his spectacles. Don't try and shift the blame like that, it wasn't us that made your world have an accident. That's what he said, but he wouldn't tell her the detailed reason when she asked. Lu Zhi Wei pouted. Lao Wu acted as if he didn't see her reaction. All right, Ying Xize needs you now, go on. Lu Zhi Wei raised an eyebrow. We agreed on the free punishment pass yet? Lao Wu, got it, got it. Ying Xize's bug had been fixed, but this time, there was no way to put a memory-fixing program in as well. So he still remembered himself thinking of Lu Zhi Wei as a man, and he would feel ashamed and upset over it. If his character kept on doubting himself and it was serious, he might end up doubting the world he lived in. So Lao Wu immediately made a deal with Lu Zhi Wei. For her to guide him through this difficulty and dispel his suspicions. And when a character encountered a problem that involved the system, they would be more willing to accept hints from outside the world, merging them into their own actions and making sense of it. In a nutshell, it's basically easily bluffed. As thanks, the system was willing to gift Lu Zhi Wei with one pass to avoid punishment. Lu Zhi Wei originally wanted to take it one step further and ask for a mission point, but Lao Wu rejected her. He also had the ability to go over his host and help Ying Xize get rid of his suspicion, but seeing as Lu Zhi Wei was scared of pain and pitiful, he decided to compassionately open the back door for her once. One punishment pass, that was the limit he could give as a mother fan. This sort of high-importance tool like a mission point. Just obediently rely on clearing Wan Ci's missions to obtain it. Although she couldn't get the mission point, Lu Zhi Wei was also happy to be able to get the punishment pass. Something is better than nothing. Pull up her sleeves and do it, the Ying Xize now was easily bluffed anyway. Ying Xize watched Lu Zhi Wei walk towards himself, feeling helpless immediately and too ashamed to talk to her. He might be able to hide for this moment, but he couldn't hide forever. Lu Zhi Wei treated him so well. He treated her as an older brother and she really acted as an older brother to him, guiding him, accompanying him, and giving him warmth. Such a good person, how could he make a mistake and run away without even apologizing? That's not what a man should do. Thinking about it, he willed his legs to stay still as he clenched his fist. When Lu Zhi Wei had walked to his side, he finally opened his mouth and softly said, "Sorry." He lowered his head in shame, like a kid who had done something wrong. Gee. Lu Zhi Wei paused then smiled. What are you apologizing for? What did you do wrong? Ying Xize saw her smile, then he looked around, there was nobody. With an embarrassed expression, his voice got even softer until it was almost inaudible. I thought you were a man for the last few days. Sigh. Lu Zhi Wei patted his back, almost as if to comfort him. Isn't it just thinking I'm a guy, what sort of big issue is that? Plenty of people thought I was a boy when I had short hair as a kid. Ying Xize, but you have long hair now. Lu Zhi Wei patted his shoulder helplessly. It's all right, I heard your assistant say you've been extremely exhausted this year. So I can understand, it must be hallucinations from lack of rest. In the past, when I worked too hard, I would start hallucinating too. Hearing that, Ying Xiz's eyes lit up slightly as he felt a bit relieved. Really, what did you hallucinate about? Lu Zhi Wei, I saw money flying in front of my eyes, as if I was going to strike it rich. She looked up at the sky, and her tone was incredibly sincere, if only it wasn't a hallucination. She really wanted to be a rich person. Even if she was invisible. Ying Xize. He patted her shoulder assuringly. No, you will be rich, you definitely will be. Lu Zhi Wei, I'll borrow your auspicious words then. You too, I hope you can drive your Lamborghini soon. Ying Xize, alright, thank you Ji. At this point, Lu Zhi Wei saw his mood had lifted and she changed the topic, feeling better now. Ying Xize paused and nodded embarrassingly, I'm better now, thank you. I mistook you but you still comforted me. Honestly, hearing Lu Zhi Wei say that she would also hallucinate when tired, his guilt had indeed dissipated slightly. As long as there was a reason to explain their behavior, people would always feel better. But he was also sincerely sorry towards Lu Zhi Wei. He was the one in the wrong, but it was Lu Zhi Wei comforting him. Don't be so polite. Lu Zhi Wei smiled. Didn't I also become your older brother for so many days? But if you're really too tired, you should take a break. If you're not well, go to the hospital. Work is important, but it will never be more important than your body. She spoke seriously, as if Ying Xize had recognized her wrongly because he was too tired. Going to the hospital would be good too, it wouldn't be a problem, just take it as doing some tests for peace of mind. Lao Wu couldn't help but tisk twice. My daughter really is the best at acting. Lug is really good. Ying Xize thought emotionally. In the future, I will definitely treat this older sister well. Alright, I know. I'll take care of my health for sure, thank you Lug. Lu Zhi Wei saw that he really accepted this hint and she sighed in relief. He was really very easily lied to. Then, Lug, if there's nothing else, I'll go talk to Director Li. Ying Xize was very obedient in front of her now. Lu Zhi Wei, go ahead. Ying Xize, I'll treat you to a meal next time. Lu Zhi Wei nodded, not being polite with him. Punishment pass, I've recorded it for you. Lao Wu said. Awesome. Lu Zhi Wei smiled happily, watching Ying Xize's retreating back. Punishment pass. That was something that could save her wretched life. Thank you Didi, Lug didn't treat you well in vain. Sang Wan Ci finished speaking to Director Li about her scenes and was about to turn around to prepare. But she unexpectedly saw Lu Zhi Wei standing with her hands behind her back happily and looking in their direction. Looking at Ying Xize's back. Sang Wan Ci. She could be so happy just by looking at his back. She had really fallen into the trap. Today's scene was about the weak female lead being pursued by her enemy. Xiao He, her maid, had worn her clothes in disguise to be bait and distract her enemies, allowing the female lead to escape while she herself would almost die. At the most critical moment, the male lead would bring his men and fight his way to her, rescuing Xiao He and telling her an important line, "You can't die, you're the most important person to her. You have to live well." This scene was to strengthen the bond between master and servant, and to help improve the male and female lead's relationship. It was also to set the scene for when the relationship between the male lead and female lead would, one day, fall apart irreparably. When Xiao He was leading the enemies away, her shoulder had been slashed once by an enemy, but she held on. The male lead saw her pale face with sweat all over, but he didn't have any medication, so he could only wrap up the wound to stop the bleeding, and then treat it when he brought her back to his military camp. Afraid she was in pain, the male lead even spoke to her to distract her. Ying Xize, acting as the male lead, tore off a strip of cloth from his clothes and sat beside Lu Zhi Wei. In her hand, she was still holding on tightly to the wooden hairpin her young miss had given her. It was hard for her to open her mouth to speak, but the moment she did, she called out for her young miss, as if she only had her young miss as a single ray of light in her life. Ying Xize had gotten into character and he laughed, asking as he bandaged the wound, "Every word out of your mouth is about your family's young miss. Why don't you consider yourself a bit more? You almost died." Lu Zhi Wei acted brilliantly in bringing Xiao He's hurt state alive. She looked at him with an ashen face, but her eyes were determined as she opened her mouth. "I'm not afraid. Young miss is righteous and willing to die for everybody in the world. I naturally also am willing to die for young miss." After she said that, she squeezed the wooden hairpin even tighter, as if afraid she would lose it. Her family's young miss cared for everybody in the world, to the point that she was willing to die for them. She was nowhere near as noble and self-sacrificing as her young miss, nor was she as intelligent or as capable. She only had one bit that was unsurprising, the desire and willingness to sacrifice everything for her young miss. It was what she could do, it was repaying her young miss. Lu Zhi Wei's gaze was as searing as the sun, with a roiling heat that couldn't be disguised even with the paleness of her skin. Watching her behind the screen, Director Li felt like she had been sucked in by this character, able to truly feel her dedication and devotion towards her young miss. At the same time, she felt thankful for Lu Zhi Wei's arrival. It was great that Lu Zhi Wei could play the role of Xiao He. With Lu Zhi Wei's current acting skills, it was already enough to bring this character entirely to life. She wasn't rushed or panicked, and she had a good foundation. If there was a chance in the future, she would still want to work with Lu Zhi Wei. On the monitoring screen, Ying Xize was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said his line. "You can't die, you're the most important person to her. You have to live well." Director Li didn't shout to cut, so the two of them could only keep acting. Lu Zhi Wei thought about Xiao He's character setting, and asked doubtfully, even more important than you?" Hearing the unexpected line, Ying Xize paused then smiled helplessly, right now, it does seem to be that way." Lu Zhi Wei stopped talking, deep in thought. "Cut." Director Li finally spoke, looking pleased. "This scene is good. That improvisation was good too, you've worked hard." The two assistants immediately brought their coats. Ying Xize reached out to take the coat from Wen Yao and handed it to Lu Zhi Wei. "It's chilly, don't catch a cold." Lu Zhi Wei took it, "Thanks." Wan Ci was standing nearby, watching the two of them. The more she watched, the more she felt Ying Xize wasn't right. If he had someone he liked, then why did he not keep himself in check and maintain a distance from other women, choosing instead to continually get close to her and treat her well? Wasn't this the rumored ruler of the sea, treating Lu Zhi Wei as a fish to be raised? Poor Lu Zhi Wei was even mesmerized by him. No, she couldn't let this go on any longer. "All right, cut. This take is perfect, Wan Ci's acting is very good." Director Li smiled. "Okay, let us all take a break, we'll resume later." As soon as Director Li's order came down, Wan Ci immediately got out of character. She lifted her head to see Lu Zhi Wei hugging her yarn and looking toward her approvingly. This was the approval of a fan towards their idol, the adoration of a fan towards their idol. In that moment, she became even more confident. Ying Xize also sighed in relief. Acting with Wan Ci was simply too demanding of himself. But before he could catch his breath, he was taken aside by Wan Ci for a word. After ensuring nobody was listening to them, Wan Ci asked immediately, "Mr. Ying, do you like me?" Ying Xize was stunned. Wan Ci had said it too naturally, without any sort of narcissism at all. Almost as if her being liked by someone was as common as having a meal. Coming back to his senses, Ying Xize sighed. Actually, it wasn't hard to tell from his previous attitude. How could someone as clever as Wan Ci not be able to guess? He didn't deny that this was something that had existed before. Wan Ci didn't lead him on either, saying, "I don't like you, that's my answer." Ying Xize didn't feel upset or disappointed at this moment, only an unexpected sense of relief. To him, Wan Ci was the moon that was out of reach. Luckily he had already woken up and decided to let go of her. Who knew that the next second, he would hear Wan Ci ask, "You like Lu Zhi Wei?" Ying Xize was thunderstruck. Who spread this rumor? They're too much. Rumor creator but not spreader. Wan Ci looked at him as her red lips parted and she spat out a single word, "Me." Ying Xize. Her words were clearly so short, but why was it so difficult to reply? Outrageous Chapter 22. Wan Ci stood silently in front of Ying Xize. Two hands folded across her chest, her expression calm. The autumn wind rustled through her hair as the plain-colored sleeve under her coat swayed in the wind. Clear and refined, just like an immortal. She looked beautiful and proper. But such a beautiful and proper person had just said something that made Ying Xize unable to respond. Even in his dreams, Ying Xize had never expected someone that he previously liked to spread rumors about him. She even made up 2 rumors at once. He couldn't continue the conversation. Teacher sang, "You're the real conversation killer, my respects." Her eyelashes fluttered slightly, like butterfly wings as Wan Ci's clear eyes shone and reflected the speechless expression of the man in front of her. She furrowed her eyes as well. Is it not? It was a simple question. But if it wasn't because he liked her, then why would he be so close to another girl when he had someone else he liked and he was gentle and incredibly considerate to her as well? It was hard for others not to suspect he had other motives. Ying Xize's heart felt tired. Look, because he was so tired he hallucinated that Lu Zhi Wei was a man. They were both misunderstood now. And it was even misunderstood by Wan Ci. He swore that he would definitely take better care of himself in the future. It's not like this, Teacher Sang misunderstood. He rubbed his forehead frustratedly. Lug and I are innocent, I absolutely don't have that sort of intent towards her. He quickly raised 3 fingers to the sky, I swear. Wan Ci's eyes were measuring him up. You don't have that sort of intent towards her, then why are you being so nice to her and getting so close? Being overly nice and ambiguous would also make others misunderstand. Now Lu Zhi Wei had fallen into that trap and become the person who had one-sided feelings. If he didn't like her, then he should have said so from the start and maintained a distance, not getting too close and giving people the chance to hope. Ying Xize's expression suddenly became complicated. Wan Ci. What with his expression did she hit the nail on the head, and he started to feel guilty. Ying Xize considered the issue of damaging Lu Zhi Wei's reputation and his heart sank, so he decided to just reveal his own embarrassing secret. I won't hide it from you anymore. I got close to Lug previously because I thought she was a man. Sang Wan Ci. Such a cute girl, you thought she was a man. Ying Xize felt embarrassed and didn't dare to look Sang Wan Ci in the eye, his gaze avoiding her. I've been exhausted these few days, my eyes and my brain weren't working too well, so I admit this reason sounds really outrageous, but it really is the truth. Teacher Sang, please believe me. Luge and I know, Lug and I really don't have that sort of relationship. I've been treating her as my own bro, no, own sister. He was sincere and urgent, every word, every action, each tone was as if he was worried Sang Wan Ci wouldn't believe him, worried that he would implicate the innocent Lu Zhi Wei to be misunderstood as well. If that really happened, then he would truly be a sinner. Sang Wan Ci lowered her eyes as she rubbed her forehead with her fingers. I am utterly speechless was written all over her face. The atmosphere suddenly went silent. Even the autumn wind blowing past their ears were trying to depict this silence. Ying Xize suddenly really wanted to live on another planet. Ying Xize, it's too awkward, please save this child. After a moment. I understand it now. Sang Wan Ci opened her mouth. 4 words that came out of the blue and were incredibly peaceful. Ying Xize paused for a moment, shock and joy appearing on his face. You believe me? I do. Sang Wan Ci looked at him calmly. If I don't believe you, I'm afraid you'll kill yourself to prove it. Ying Xize. Was I so exaggerated just now? Suddenly, he thought of something and had to ask, but why did you suddenly start caring about us out of the blue? Sang Wan Ci corrected him, I don't care about you. Then she used a tone that couldn't be refuted with and said naturally, I only care about Lu Zhi Wei. Lu Zhi Wei was her fan and gave her so much support. By right, she couldn't watch Lu Zhi Wei jump into a fire pit and get hurt as her idol. Ying Xize rubbed his head in confusion. Why could she say this sort of stuff in such an obvious tone? He felt like something wasn't quite right somewhere. After shooting the scenes for that day, Lu Zhi Wei had already gone back to the hotel to eat, shower, memorize her lines and knit. And wait for Sang Wan Ci. She didn't walk out of the room at all the entire night. She didn't have much to do in terms of entertainment, and no matter what she did, it would certainly only be with herself. So she could stay at home for long periods of time and entertain herself. And Sang Wan Ci had said she was going to come over to find her. Thus she didn't dare to run around, waiting obediently in the room. 10:05 p.m. The sky outside the window had gotten dark quite a while ago. Lu Zhi Wei stopped knitting and looked at the time. She didn't know what time the filming crew would wrap up. And she didn't know if Sang Wan Ci actually remembered their promise to meet. Because she was used to being forgotten, she didn't believe other people's promises easily. Luckily, there was still a Lao Wu accompanying her. She still hasn't come. Lao Wu said. Lu Zhi Wei replied, her face unchanging. Seeing the situation, Lao Wu joked, you don't seem anxious at all, aren't you scared she forgot? Lu Zhi Wei said calmly, so be it if she forgot, it's not the first time I'm encountering such an issue. Even if she forgets today, we can still meet tomorrow. Lao Wu asked, not the first time this happened to you before too. Yet. Lu Zhi Wei distractedly spoke of the past. When I was still studying, a classmate invited me to have shaved ice after school, so she asked me to wait for her at the shop entrance. I was really happy then, thinking I could finally have a friend. So once school ended, I carried my bag and rushed to the shaved ice shop to wait. In the end, I waited until the owner closed the shop, I waited until the moon was high in the sky, but I didn't see her at all. The next day, I asked her why she didn't show up. And she said, I forgot. She laughed, sigh, she didn't even remember that she invited me out. Lao Wu suddenly didn't know what to say. After that, other people invited me too, but I was stood up every time without fail. After that, I got used to it and I got smarter. Either I rejected them, or I just went home after school ended. Lu Zhi Wei tore off a small fluorescent sticky note and stuck it by the side of the paper, patting it with a relaxed expression. As long as I don't go, as long as I don't have expectations, the person hurt won't be me. As she said that, her expression suddenly changed, as if she was a kid who was praising her own cleverness. Lao Wu stayed silent. This was the life of a transparent entity. Perpetually being forgotten. Perpetually being hurt. Unlike normal people, they had no power to change this sort of situation. And nobody would be there for them to vent or complain to. Because nobody would believe them, and nobody would remember the pain they suffered. But Lu Zhi Wei had lived well. No extravagance, no expectations, she was optimistic and hard-working, shining on herself like she was the sun. If Wan Ci also forgot, you really won't be upset. Lao Wu sighed, his expression filled with compassion. Not even a little bit. Lu Zhi Wei's expression stiffened for a second before relaxing, I'll still be a bit sad. Someone who's already become the male lead but still remains so transparent, it's a bit saddening to hear. But thinking about it, if teacher Sang forgot, then I can go to bed earlier. That was all she was good for. At least sleep would make her happier, she didn't have to care about anything when she closed her eyes. At this moment, a knock came from the door. Lu Zhi Wei quickly got up and looked out through the peephole. Wan Ci who didn't forget their promise to meet. A tightly coiled string inside Lu Zhi Wei's chest relaxed as she couldn't help but smile, a gentle and happy light shining from her eyes. It was the first time someone had showed up when they said they would. Even if it was the most ordinary meeting, so this was the feeling of not having to wait for nothing. It was really nice. Thinking about that, she opened the door for Wan Ci. Wan Ci spoke first to explain, sorry I'm late, filming just wrapped. Did I disturb your rest? At least you didn't forget. Lu Zhi Wei smiled, no, I wasn't sleeping yet. And it's all right, teacher Sang has worked so hard, I'm really glad you could come. Please come in. The hotel she was staying in naturally couldn't compare to how nice and big Wan Ci's was. But at least it was clean and quiet with an okay environment. She washed a cup and poured a glass of hot water for Wan Ci, careful, it's hot. Wan Ci sat down on the sofa by the window and took the cup, thanking her. She was impeccably elegant. You're welcome. Lu Zhi Wei stood by her side, looking all around for a moment before opening her mouth. What does teacher Sang want? Wan Ci put the cup down and looked up at her. Those eyes hooked Lu Zhi Wei's gaze as if they had magic, rendering her unable to look away. Lu Zhi Wei suddenly fell silent, praising Wan Ci's beauty in her heart. How could there be someone as beautiful as Wan Ci on this earth? How exactly were her genes arranged? Lu Zhi Wei. Her whole name being suddenly called brought her back to her senses as she looked at the pretty woman on the sofa. Only to see her red lips part as she said, you lied to me. Lu Zhi Wei. Wan Ci had a straight face on, you said you were only just friends with Ying Xize, but you actually fell for him. You fell into his trap. Lu Zhi Wei, ah, Who said she liked Ying Xize? When did she fall into a trap? How come she didn't know? Where did Sang Wan Ci come up with such an outrageous idea? Lu Zhi Wei opened her mouth confusedly. Who said that? Sang Wan Ci was truthful, I found it out myself. Lu Zhi Wei. The female lead wasn't just not following the script, now she was even beginning to write her own script.
Chapter 23. Outrageous, it was too outrageous. Sang Wan Ci, you really are smart. So be it if you changed the script on your own, you even came up with fanfiction for the male lead and second male lead. Is this the new age idol drama female lead? I'm in love with it. Lu Zhi Wei smiled helplessly. Teacher Sang, you're mistaken, I don't like him. Sang Wan Ci looked at her, expressing her confusion. If you don't like him, then why would you say you're happy to see him, and even smile while looking at his back? Although she had never dated, she could clearly see through such obvious actions. If this wasn't love, then what was? It was only now that Lu Zhi Wei realized today's events had been misunderstood by Sang Wan Ci. No wonder Sang Wan Ci was staring at her so sternly just now. Now she was curious. Did Sang Wan Ci come to speak to her because she thought she liked Ying Xize? Was it because she didn't want her to like Ying Xize, or for another reason? This curiosity won out over the desire for an explanation. She couldn't help but ask, Teacher Sang came to speak to me because of this? Sang Wan Ci didn't deny it, forthright as always. She stared unblinkingly at the innocent-looking person in front of her, looking calm and serious. We're working together now, and you're my fan. No matter what, I don't want you to be hurt because of romance. And you have the right to understand exactly what kind of person you like. Ying Xize. Sang Wan Ci paused, giving her some time to digest the news, before she frowned and continued, he doesn't like you, he has someone else in his heart. He just treats you as a jiulian, don't be too upset. The last line, even Sang Wan Ci felt was too cruel, so she changed gij out. Being treated as an elder brother by the person you liked, which girl would want to experience such a wretched thing? This was a bit of dignity she could help Lu Zhi Wei keep. She didn't expect Lu Zhi Wei's expression to be calm beyond belief, and she was even able to smile. I know, Xiao He likes you. I also know he treats me as a jiulian. As she spoke, she complained about the system in her heart. Broken system, stupid system. She didn't even dare to be honest to the female lead about being mistaken as a man. She was afraid Sang Wan Ci would think she was ridiculous. Sang Wan Ci looked at her calmly. There was no sadness or resentment in Lu Zhi Wei's demeanor. There was only plenty of calmness and amusement. Almost as if it was a jiulian talking to others about her deity's love life. Sang Wan Ci was dumbstruck. Could it be? She had really misunderstood? Her eyebrows knit together gently as she sank into self-doubt. Hidden under the beautiful skin, there was a certain cuteness. Lu Zhi Wei smiled as she watched. She took 2 steps back and sat on the bed as she looked at Sang Wan Ci, calmly stating, Don't worry, Teacher Sang. I don't like him, I only treat him as a deity as well. I have no other intention when I said all that. I'm happy when I see him, I'm happy when I see Director Li, I'm also happy when I see our Teacher Sang. As long as I can see everybody healthy and safe, I'm happy. In her life, even if there weren't any happy surprises, as long as she could make it through the day safe, she would be happy and satisfied even if it was a boring day. One had to learn to be content first, before they could be happy. As for smiling at his back, Lu Zhi Wei thought about it and randomly found an excuse. It's because he wasn't in a good mood yesterday, but he managed to get over it today, so I was happy for him as a jiulian. Combined with Ying Xize's reaction, Sang Wan Ci finally decided that she was the one who had misunderstood. Sorry, I misunderstood. Lu Zhi Wei hurriedly waved her hands. It's okay, it's okay. Teacher Sang was just concerned. She embarrassingly looked down at the hotel slippers as her heart felt warm. I just didn't think that Teacher Sang would care about my affairs. Nobody had ever cared about whether or not she would be hurt, much less specially make a trip to advise her. She was a ball of air, floating outside everybody's world, forever silent and invisible. But Wan Ci had done it. Perhaps it was because she had the male protagonist halo, so Wan Ci could see her, but Wan Ci had really done it. In her busy schedule, during the time she was supposed to go back and rest, she had come because she was scared Lu Zhi Wei would get hurt. So it didn't matter what reason Wan Ci noticed her for, it wouldn't stop Lu Zhi Wei from feeling she was good. She was content. Wan Ci was very good. The effort she put into correcting Ying wasn't in vain. Wan Ci looked at her, red lips parting. Every person's liking is a precious gift. Lu Zhi Wei raised her head, making eye contact. Wan Ci continued slowly, I just don't wish for you to love someone who doesn't like you, only for you to waste your feelings. Hearing that, Lu Zhi Wei paused. She understood the logic, but she couldn't help but laugh and joke, this sounds pretty hard. Liking someone isn't a multiple-choice question with the ability to choose whatever you want. But seeing Wan Ci's serious expression, her gaze turned incomparably gentle. But I believe it must be easy for teacher Sang. Because you're so good, nobody would not like you. Detailed, kind, upright and adorable. She was so beautiful nobody could refuse her, and she was even the female lead. Wan Ci was the exact opposite of reusable. Wan Ci tilted her head slightly as she looked at Lu Zhi Wei, not replying, as if she was trying to figure out the meaning behind her words. Her final conclusion, it was a bunch of rainbow farts from a true love fan. Rainbow farts were always exaggerated. She got to her feet calmly. Since it was a misunderstanding, then she had no need to continue disturbing Lu Zhi Wei's rest. I'll go back first, go rest. Lu Zhi Wei got up as well, preparing to send her to the door. As soon as she lifted a foot, the silent system finally issued a mission. Mission issued, it's late. Let the female lead Wan Ci agree to stay over. Time limit, 1 minute. Lu Zhi Wei? I think this system is trying to end my life at 26. Outrageous, Chapter 24. Lu Zhi Wei was speechless. Facing these missions that were getting more and more outrageous, she started wondering if there would be a day when she would be driven to an early death by the system. Asking Wan Ci to stay the night. She wasn't even friends with Wan Ci right now, why would she agree to stay the night? And suddenly asking someone to stay the night was even stranger. Their hotels weren't very far apart. She didn't even want to try it, she would die if she tried it. She had worked so hard to build up a budding friendship with Wan Ci, it couldn't all go to waste because of this lousy mission. If Lao Wu was in front of her, she would certainly activate the pointing fingers ability. What's going on with your system? How can the missions get more and more unprofessional, more and more outrageous? Lao Wu calmly pushed up his spectacles. How is it unprofessional? It's just staying the night. We're not asking you to do something else, are you thinking of something you shouldn't? Besides, the missions issued by the system are all to deepen the feelings between the main leads. It's probably because it was detected that the atmosphere between you two was good just now, so they just gave you a push to help out. Lu Zhi Wei? Lao Wu, you didn't expect that, did you? Lu Zhi Wei. She didn't expect that, she truly didn't. What a nice push to help out. But could they first consider that their hotels were close by and just needed a few minutes of walking to get to? Lao Wu hurried her up, alright, there's only 1 minute, it's urgent, go complete the mission. Lu Zhi Wei scoffed in her heart and played her immunity pass, you didn't expect that, did you? Lao Wu, I sure didn't. He didn't expect her to not even give it a try. It seems she was really worried about Wan Ci doubting her intelligence. The mission failed, but since there was no punishment this time, it went into the list of missions yet to be completed. Lu Zhi Wei felt her heart hurt at using the immunity pass. The immunity pass she had worked so hard to get this morning was gone by nighttime. Lu Zhi Wei, woo-woo, this child only has 2. But thinking about it, it was a good thing since it didn't ruin the impression Wan Ci had of her right now. She felt comforted in the middle of her heartache. She sighed heavily and followed Sang Wan Ci to the door, seeing her out. Teacher Sang, be careful on your way back, send me a message once you reach the hotel. Sang Wan Ci turned back to look at her silently. Lu Zhi Wei awkwardly pressed her lips together and smiled embarrassingly. My God, I forgot I don't have the means to contact her. Luckily, Sang Wan Ci didn't show any expression or continue the topic. She just calmly said, sleep early, see you tomorrow. The awkwardness was skipped over just like that. Lu Zhi Wei nodded her head frantically, having been given an out. She closed the door and went to shower before lying on her bed. Suddenly, she started to worry. Lao Wu had just said the system would check the atmosphere before giving them a push, to increase the feelings between the main leads. Then the next time, the mission would be just as outrageous, or even more outrageous. Save this child. At this moment, Ying sent a message over and broke her out of her reverie. Ying, sis, there's something I must make clear to you. Ying, I don't like you. Lu Zhi Wei? What was he talking about now? You couldn't have gone off script too? This isn't a fan fiction between the male lead and male supporting lead. Ying, no, not that I don't like you. Ying, sigh, what I mean is, this sort of like is the like between a man and a woman. Ying, my like for you is between a little brother to a big bro or sis, not from a man to a woman, do you get it? Lu Zhi Wei furrowed her eyebrows. Lu Zhi Wei, I get it, haven't we always had a brotherly relationship? Lu Zhi Wei, why did you suddenly bring this up? Ying, sigh, teacher Sang came to find me today. She told me that if I don't like you, I shouldn't lead you on and be so close to you, making you misunderstand. I thought what she said made sense, so I came to explain to you. Lu Zhi Wei. Her feelings suddenly felt complicated. She was surprised that Sang Wan Ci had even went to speak to Ying, but she also felt touched. No matter what, Sang Wan Ci had done it out of a sincere wish for her to not be hurt. Thinking about this, she couldn't help but smile. Her finger glided across the screen. Lu Zhi Wei, don't worry, I've always treated you as a little brother, I've never thought about the other way. Ying finally felt assured. Ying, sis, hearing you say that, I'm relieved. Ying, you have no idea, so that teacher Sang wouldn't misunderstand you, I had to tell her about me mistaking you as a man today. Ying, it was so embarrassing. Lu Zhi Wei's eyes betrayed the shock she was feeling. She didn't think Ying would truthfully tell Sang Wan Ci about this. Such an outrageous thing, how could Sang Wan Ci believe it? Lu Zhi Wei, and then what happened? Ying, and then she believed it. Lu Zhi Wei? Believed it? Sang Wan Ci just believed it like that? She was so gullible? This sort of thing, believing it too easily was abnormal. Could it be? Lu Zhi Wei suddenly thought of an absurd idea. Then she saw Ying had sent another message. She said that if she still didn't believe it, I would kill myself to prove it. Her train of thought broke. Lu Zhi Wei. That certainly wasn't necessary. Most of the remaining scenes Lu Zhi Wei had were all by Sang Wan Ci's side, constantly showing the deep affection between the master and servant. When she wasn't filming, she liked to stay in the filming area to learn. She also had to watch Sang Wan Ci act and continue to be a good fan, giving her the warmest, strongest support. Phoenix was a drama about a strong female lead, so the storyline naturally had more emphasis on Sang Wan Ci, and this was an intelligent character, so there were plenty of scenes about her strategics. Every time there was such a scene, Lu Zhi Wei would either be by her side or nearby. The only thing that was unchanging was that her gaze would forever be on Sang Wan Ci. It was the same today. Lu Zhi Wei held her phone and stood outside the filming area, calmly watching the scene unfold. Sang Wan Ci had a white cape embroidered with cloud patterns draped over her shoulders, and her elegant, slender fingers were holding onto a long, thin ink brush. Clean Xian paper was rolled out in front of her, on a low table. She looked at the paper, as if thinking about something. Her soft, long hair slid down from over her shoulder, gently landing on the table. She didn't move at all, staying as quiet as the skies and earth. Her elegant eyebrows furrowed from time to time, but quickly smoothed out again. She looked serious and deep in contemplation, resulting in nobody daring to disturb her. Soon, she had an idea as her eyes widened slightly and lit up charmingly. Lu Zhi Wei watched as she smoothed out the paper before holding back her sleeve and lowering the brush. The camera zoomed in, filming the words she was writing. She had clearly practiced calligraphy before, the brush moving smoothly as the elegant words took form. It wasn't hard to see that she had a good foundation in the art. When she was writing, her face was serious and focused. A ray of light came in from the window, illuminating the corner of her beautiful eyes. Gentle and silent, she was as beautiful as a painting. Lu Zhi Wei hid behind the crowd, sighing in her heart before opening the camera app on her phone. It was natural human instinct to want to preserve beauty. She would just sneakily take a photo, she wouldn't spread it out. It would be fine, right? She wouldn't get caught? Cut. Director Li spoke. Just as she pressed the shutter button. At that instant, Wan Ci lifted her head, looking towards Lu Zhi Wei's direction unerringly. She also saw the phone that was pointed in her direction. Lu Zhi Wei, who was still hopeful a second ago, looked at the screen, at the person inside looking back at her. Hashtag I sneakily took a photo of a female star and got caught by her immediately, what should I do? I'm waiting online, it's super urgent.
Chapter 25. Lu Zhi Wei watched as Wan Ci got to her feet and bowed to the crew beside her, thanking them for their work. Then she walked over to Lu Zhi Wei, her belt fluttering in the wind. Lu Zhi Wei stepped back guiltily, stiffly keeping her phone away helplessly. Who could tell her? Why did Wan Ci locate her so precisely? The weather was excellent today, with the radiant sunlight shining in from the side of the door that was thrown open. The light brushed across Wan Ci's skirt and cape like gold dust. The cape's cloud patterns shifted like running water as she moved, almost as if they were alive at that moment, chasing after Wan Ci's footsteps. In the light, her face was only slightly dusted with powder, but it was as perfect as a carved piece of art, impeccably intricate and exquisite. With such a perfect person walking toward her, Lu Zhi Wei couldn't help but hold her breath, as if afraid that her breathing would shatter this porcelain doll and break this perfection. Truthfully, looking at this face so often, she was really on the verge of becoming a looks fan. It was human nature to love beauty. If she really became a looks fan, she couldn't be faulted for not being firm in her beliefs. Lu Zhi Wei. The light and shadows stopped chasing each other as Wan Ci stopped in front of her, a calm expression on her face. Were you taking photos of me just now? Because of the fact that every time she finished filming a scene she could always see Lu Zhi Wei praising her like she was the leader of a praising fan club, and also due to the fact that she felt comfortable when Lu Zhi Wei was praising her, so every time she finished a scene, she would habitually look over to where Lu Zhi Wei was, preparing to accept the review from her true love fan. But today, her true love fan seemed to have given something else to her. Lu Zhi Wei instantly felt her scalp prickle. Being caught sneakily taking photos, there really wasn't any way of thinking about it that didn't make a person want to find a hole to hide in. But it's all right, she still had her fan disguise. With this fan disguise, it was almost like a revival card. A fan felt that her idol was really good looking when filming, so she sneakily took a photo. It was understandable. She figured out her excuse and was about to say it when Wan Ci spoke. How did the photo turn out? Show it to me. When she said this, her face was incredibly calm and there was only a hint of curiosity in her voice. Lu Zhi Wei. This wasn't what she expected. She thought Wan Ci would be angry at her. You're not angry? Lu Zhi Wei asked. Wan Ci suddenly smiled. So you really were taking photos of me? Lu Zhi Wei. FCK. She fell into the trap. Wan Ci asked casually, "Will you spread the photos?" Lu Zhi Wei shook her head. Wan Ci continued asking, "Will you use it for bad purposes?" Lu Zhi Wei's head shaking got even more intense. Wan Ci asked again, "Did you take an unflattering photo of me?" Lu Zhi Wei's head shaking was essentially like shaking a rattle at this point. Wan Ci's expression got even calmer. "If that's the case, then what do I have to be angry about? Which fan didn't he have a few photos of their idol?" This wasn't hard to understand, and Lu Zhi Wei was her true love fan as well. Besides, she believed in Lu Zhi Wei's character. She wasn't someone who would make things difficult for others. On the contrary, she would probably be even more worried about troubling others. After all, she was different from the rest. Lu Zhi Wei was stunned. She didn't expect Wan Ci to trust her so much. The next second, she heard Wan Ci ask, "So why did you suddenly take a photo of me?" Lu Zhi Wei answered embarrassingly, "Because teacher Sang is good looking, so." "Then you don't have to take a photo secretly," Wan Ci said. What? Lu Zhi Wei blinked. Wan Ci took her phone and realized the screen was still on the camera app. So she stood next to Lu Zhi Wei and raised the phone up. "You can tell me directly. I want to reject you. I want to reject you." Lu Zhi Wei looked at her side profile incredulously, mysteriously feeling as if this sentence had a hidden meaning, but she couldn't guess it. Was it the love and care an idol had for her fan, or was it the relationship between colleagues, friends? The latter wasn't quite likely. Or was it something else? Lu Zhi Wei couldn't think of any other reason. Feeling like she was overthinking it, she quickly went back to the first reason. It seems like teacher Sang is someone who spoils her fans. Although she did refuse to give Lu Zhi Wei her contact details the last time. Her dazed stare at Wan Ci was captured on the phone. Looking at the photo, Wan Ci asked, "Do you want to take another one?" Lu Zhi Wei came back to her senses and quickly put on her fan persona. "Ah, yes, it's my honor to be able to take a photo with teacher Sang. Today, even if God came, he wouldn't be able to stop her from pretending to be a fan." Wan Ci stayed silent and waited for her to get into position, then they took another photo together. Finally, she returned the phone to Lu Zhi Wei. Taking it back, Lu Zhi Wei replied, "Thank you." Then, she heard Wan Ci say, "I know a lot of fans will use their idol's photo as their wallpaper." Lu Zhi Wei. Wan Ci said seriously, "I agree to appearing on your phone's home screen." Lu Zhi Wei. She held her phone tightly, not daring to say a word. The fake fan who had teacher Meng as her phone wallpaper simply did not dare to speak. After wrapping up the shooting at night, Lu Zhi Wei walked back to her hotel with Wen Yao. On the way, Wen Yao chatted with her. "I feel like your relationship with teacher Sang is getting better and better, Zhi Wei ji." Lu Zhi Wei smiled. Yes, but until now, she still didn't have a way to contact Wan Ci. The mission to be fulfilled was still accumulating in Lao Wu's control room. She didn't say whether to say it was good or not. She even had Director Li's contact. But thinking about the fact that she even had Director Li's contact, and Director Li was the one who took the initiative to add her, she suddenly felt a little better. She even felt a bit happy. She didn't have to film scenes like before, silently and unnoticed. It felt so good to be able to be recognized if she put in the effort. "I feel that teacher Sang is quite good," Wen Yao suddenly said. Hearing that, Lu Zhi Wei gently nodded. Although Wan Ci looked like an unreachable flower that grew on a tall cliff, but if you interacted with her, you would realize the cuteness under the exterior. The more serious she was, the cuter she was. There was a sort of contrasting cuteness. Most importantly, Wan Ci was serious about her work. She treated others sincerely and she treated Lu Zhi Wei well. It was hard not to have good feelings toward her. This sort of female lead was worth being liked and being protected. Returning to the hotel, Lu Zhi Wei cleaned up before lying on her bed and looking at her phone. She tapped into Wan Ci's Weibo. Wan Ci very rarely used her looks to promote her work. Everything that appeared on her Weibo was related to reposting her work. Because of that, many fans would appear in the comments section begging her to use selfies to promote her work, so as to not waste her heavenly looks. Seeing this, Lu Zhi Wei opened her phone's gallery and found the selfie Wan Ci took. Whether it was on camera or off camera, Wan Ci was still forever flawless and perfect. She, on the other hand, was ordinary and plain. Anybody would become ordinary and plain next to Wan Ci. But she didn't mind. She didn't rely on her looks to earn money, so why did she need extraordinary beauty as long as she didn't look ugly? That was good enough. But looking at the photo, she suddenly felt a bit proud. It was difficult enough for fans who wanted to see Wan Ci post a selfie, but she actually had the good fortune to take one with Wan Ci. It was even Wan Ci who took the photo. She looked at the photo and smiled, her eyes curving. Suddenly feeling something was wrong, the smile froze on her face. What was with her and those thoughts? Why did she secretly feel happy about taking a photo with Wan Ci? Am I not a fake fan? She quickly exited the app and looked at her wallpaper of Meng Lian to calm down. On her home screen, there was a mature woman. Her hair was curled like waves, and she had a pair of passionate eyes. Lu Zhi Wei had seen her use these eyes in countless roles, creating character after character that held tightly to her heart, fascinating and shocking the viewers. This was her idol. This was the person she looked up to and aspired to be even in her dreams. Mission scroll Weibo before bed complete. She put down her phone and turned off the lights. In the darkness, she suddenly had a small wish. I hope that in the future, I have a chance to work together with teacher Meng. The filming progressed smoothly, and 1 month later, the scenes in Phoenix changed from mountains, forests, and sandy battlefields to the big and imposing palace. The male lead became the emperor, the female lead became the empress. The little stuttering maid also became the most senior palace maid by the empress side. There was also change in terms of the aesthetics, of course, from simple and plain elegance to the rich palace dresses. The costume change was clearly the most drastic in the two main leads. Wan Ci got rid of her plain, elegant robes and swapped them for the dignified, precious phoenix attire, with phoenix hairpins and her lips stained red. The ends of her eyes, which were originally plain and languid, got a few casual strokes drawn on by the makeup artist, and suddenly became much more imposing. Dignified and generous, looking like a goddess. Lu Zhi Wei was stunned with just a glance and full of praise. Save me, this face is too suited for wearing ancient attire. Lu Zhi Wei even realized that Wan Ci was very capable of applying pressure through her eyes. Even when she was standing placidly, she gave off a feeling that she could kill the emperor and take the throne by herself. Once the filming started, she immediately got into character, softening the indifference and sharpness to play the role of a minister and wife. Director Li praised her for having a natural talent for acting. She was humble, saying she had practiced with someone teaching her step by step. When asked who was so impressive, she refused to divulge their identity, saying, "It's a secret." Hearing that by the side, Lu Zhi Wei couldn't help but guess. She even pulled along Lao Wu to guess. Lao Wu had no interest in guessing these sorts of things. If he was curious, he could simply pull out the original script and take a look at all the relationships. Lu Zhi Wei rested her face on her hand as she looked at Sang Wan Ci. I talked to Director Li. We're not doing anything now anyway, let us just take a guess. Lao Wu, who said I'm not doing anything, I still have to train my 8-pack. Lu Zhi Wei. She teased, what's up, you want to let your crush see it? Actually, she didn't know if Lao Wu had a crush on anyone. Lao Wu seemed to be in the control room from day to night. It seems like there's no time for him to date either in the end, Lao Wu replied her with a single word, Lu Zhi Wei's gossipy side immediately came out as she asked curiously, really I thought you worked from day to night, and had no time to date. We're not dating. Lao Wu was very frank. I like her one-sidedly, she doesn't have feelings for me. Lu Zhi Wei. So it's a one-sided romance. That's terrible, Wu. Talking about the person he liked, Lao Wu leaned back and couldn't help but say a few more sentences. Perhaps she doesn't have feelings for anybody. She has her own dreams, and before they're complete, I don't think she'll stop for anybody. Let us be clear, I'm training my ABS not because she required it, but because I want to. It's because she doesn't like men with flabby stomachs. I don't like it either, it's ugly. Lu Zhi Wei, oh. Then you have a common topic with Xiao Ying. I don't. Lao Wu immediately denied it, resolutely defending his feelings. I would never find a replacement, nobody can take her place. Lu Zhi Wei suddenly felt curious about who could so securely capture Lao Wu's heart, then what kind of person is she? Lao Wu got up, same as you, empathetic, and she always acts as a mother to small supporting roles. He poured himself a cup of water. In the past, I didn't understand why she would do that, but after meeting you, I kind of understand now. Someone like Lu Zhi Wei wouldn't even be considered a passerby. She tried her hardest to integrate into the world, but she was always rejected by it. Their lives were forever trapped in darkness with no light or reply. So they became incredibly easy to please with just a bit of kindness needed. Lu Zhi Wei was stunned. It was only then that she realized, she wasn't the only one who had to live like this in the world. The conversation suddenly was heavy, and Lu Zhi Wei changed the topic after realizing it. Oh, so you guys are colleagues? We were. Lao Wu washed an apple and pulled out a knife, skinning it methodically. Not anymore. Lu Zhi Wei, why, she quit. Lao Wu's hands stopped moving, then he slowly smiled, she quit. Thinking about it, they hadn't seen each other in a very, very long time. He didn't know where she was now, whether she was doing okay or not. But he still believed that one day in the future, they would meet again. He would be in his most optimal condition, waiting for that day to confess to her again. Lu Zhi Wei, oh. She seemed to have accidentally poked her mother Fan's sore spot. Lao Wu threw the apple skin into the rubbish bin and said lightly, don't worry, although you two are the same with strong empathy, I want to take you as her. To her, I want to become a husband. To you, I only want to be a mom. Lu Zhi Wei. Your style has changed too quickly. Lao Wu bit into the apple, work hard, good daughter. Mommy's waiting for you to walk the Diamond Road 3. Please read at jiulian. WordPress, Lu Zhi Wei. Honestly, a diamond road sounds like it'll be painful. Lu Zhi Wei was about to continue gossiping when Team A started preparing to shoot. So she could only keep her curiosity in and stand up, patting her skirt. She took off her heavy coat and handed it to Wen Yao, walking over in the slowly falling snow. An city had started snowing in November, and the weather was getting colder and colder. In just a short period of time, she was going to wrap up filming and leave the team. The scenes moved from outdoors to indoors, and the female lead's scenes also welcomed new trends. Living in the palace was like living in a cage, and the person who shared her bed slowly changed. Everything was advancing in a direction she had never expected. A year later, the emperor neglected the empress and pampered his noble consort, indulging in sensual pleasures and becoming more and more fatuous. The emotional separation of the emperor and empress was irreversible. There was only the little stuttering maid Xiao He who was loyal and stayed by the empress' side. Xiao He watched as the previously carefree young miss turned into a silent, somber bird trapped in a cage. Although she was the mother of the people and noble beyond compare, she did not even have as much freedom as a bird outside. And the emperor spoiled the noble consort, letting her handle the 6 palaces forgetting his rightful wife who had stayed by his side and supported him during his hardships. The noble consort even dared to be disrespectful to the empress. Even so, the emperor felt she was cute. She was just a young lady who was immature. He asked the empress to be the bigger person and forgive this naive young lady. Xiao He even witnessed the emperor and empress quarreling. At that time, she was kneeling on the floor like the rest of the servants, her head stuck to the floor as she stayed deathly still. Only her ears were picking up the fight. Because of the world, because of the court, because of the past, because of the present, they always ended each meeting unhappily. The emperor even kept bringing up granting her death. The empress wasn't afraid either, always replying with a glare, "From the day I started following you, I have never had a day where I was scared of death." When she said this, her eyes were filled with tears that never fell. Every time he saw it, he couldn't say anything, stretching out a hand to help her wipe it away only to see her stubbornly turn her face away. She wasn't even willing to let him touch a single tear. He would fly into a rage because of it. Thinking of himself as the owner of the world and a woman not showing him respect, he would leave in anger. Xiao He didn't understand. They clearly weren't like this before. The general then, so clearly liked the young miss. He liked her until he was willing to pluck the moon and stars from the sky for her. He liked her until he was willing to protect her maid, not willing to let her endure any pain. Why did things turn out like this? Xiao He could feel the young miss' unhappiness. She wanted to make her happy. But somehow, her young miss' smile had turned slight and shallow, fleeting like the wind. Her young miss would no longer be happy like she was in the past. Wan Ci was able to portray the character's happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy accurately. Even each tear in her eye was meticulously designed, clinging to her eyelashes yet not falling, making people hurt for her. Ying Xizer, the emperor, couldn't help but sigh in his heart along with Lu Zhi Wei. This emperor is an utter fool to abandon such a beautiful wife. Men are all pigs. Lu Zhi Wei was still immersed in her feelings, angrily scolding. Ying Xizer immediately said, "I'm not." "Lao Wu, I'm not too." Lu Zhi Wei. "Thanks, I managed to get out of character." Wan Ci calmly wiped her tears away. From the reactions of the audience, her acting was very successful. Success meant that the feelings she had brought out weren't wasted, and she didn't take those personal classes in vain as well. After such an emotional scene, the actors had to take a break. Wan Ci picked up her phone. A contact that she saved as teacher along with 2 red roses sent her a message. "Teacher, is the shoot done? How was it?" Seeing this message, Wan Ci's eyes immediately softened as she smiled and replied, Sang Wan Ci, it's done. From everybody's reaction, it went well. Then she added another line, thanks to teacher's guidance. Teacher, that's good then. It's snowing and it's cold, make sure to keep warm and not fall sick. Sang Wan Ci, I got it, you too. Teacher, if you have time, give your father a call. This time, Sang Wan Ci didn't reply immediately. She had left home a while ago, and she hadn't spoken to her father in a long time. Neither of them were willing to take a step back. Teacher, no matter what, he's your father. Teacher, if you're still angry, I suggest for you two to quarrel over the phone and help each other vent. Keeping it in isn't good. Teacher, if you fall sick because you're keeping your anger in, it's not worth it. Sang Wan Ci couldn't help but laugh. Sang Wan Ci, if he knew you gave me such an idea, you'd be scolded. Teacher, am I scared of him after 2 seconds? Teacher, okay, I'm a little scared. He's really quite scary when he's showing his angry face. Teacher, will you be going home over the new year? Sang Wan Ci's answer was easy to deduce. If she went back, her father would certainly be angry and they would definitely argue over her leaving home to be an actress. This sort of new year, what's the point? It would be better to not celebrate it. Teacher, all right, I understand. Teacher, I'll go to work first, you can look for me if you need help with another scene in the future. Teacher, you're alone outside, you have to make sure you eat and be good. Sang Wan Ci, don't worry, I'm not a child, I know. After that, Sang Wan Ci kept her phone away and closed her eyes, taking a rest before the next scene. On the other hand, Lu Zhi Wei was chatting with Ying Xizer's. As they chatted, they discussed Ying Xizer's birthday in December. Lu Zhi Wei didn't know if she would still be with the crew by then. She asked what Ying Xizer wanted. She didn't have any experience giving people birthday gifts. Other people wouldn't remember her birthday, so they naturally wouldn't invite her to their parties. And the birthday gift she would give herself was simply happily eating a big meal where she wouldn't worry about the cost. Aside from that, she didn't have any other desire. Ying Xizer thought about it. Help me achieve my Lamborghini dream. Lu Zhi Wei sighed, all right, I'll dream of it tonight. I'll try to arrange it for you in my dream, let's arrange for the most expensive model, how about it? Ying Xizer couldn't help but laugh, all right, I'm just kidding. Sis, you can give me anything. Even if it's just a happy birthday. The gift isn't important, as long as I get the good intent behind it. He knew Lu Zhi Wei's current financial situation. If he still wanted an expensive gift under these circumstances, then he really was a terrible person. Seeing that he didn't care if the gift was expensive or not, Lu Zhi Wei was assured and she had an idea. She decided to knit him a hat. The whole thing would be red, symbolizing good luck and popularity in his career. Time passed and December arrived quickly, along with Lu Zhi Wei's final scene. Conflict with the noble consort, being beaten to death and utterly severing the last remnants of feelings between the emperor and empress. Before they officially started filming, they had seriously and meticulously practiced their scenes from start to finish. This was her last scene in the show, and it was one of the most important. Her death would not only let the female lead step out of her predicament, but it would also agitate the feelings of the viewers, making them resent the male lead. When the female lead finally punished him, it would be a relief for them. This was the whole meaning of Xiao He's character. Life or death, it was all for her young miss. Once everything was set up, the actors got into position. The arrogant noble consort who was running the 6 palaces had long since started eyeing the empress position, and she could no longer stand seeing the current empress. She felt that the empress only had that bit of intelligence, and she only got her position because she followed the emperor earlier. Besides that, she had nothing outstanding. But she held on to that position. It was frustrating to watch. If this woman didn't exist, the person holding onto the role of empress now would be her. She was angry, but she didn't dare to scold the empress to her face. Even if she was sarcastic and snarky, the empress wouldn't take it to heart. She wouldn't even care, making the noble consort even more upset. Thus, she started looking for ways to torment the people serving the empress. Especially that stuttering maid Xiao He. She stopped Xiao He while the maid was running an errand for the empress and asked the maid to pay respects to her. Xiao He didn't think too much of it, and paid her respects. The noble consort wasn't satisfied, saying Xiao He's etiquette wasn't good. She even said Xiao He's answers weren't said smoothly enough and that it was disrespecting her. Everybody in the rear palace knew that the empress made Xiao He stuttered. Asking a stuttering person to speak smoothly, wasn't that impossible? Anybody could see that she was intentionally stirring up trouble. But the noble consort didn't care. She was spoiled by the emperor and she utilized that to do whatever she wanted. Xiao He knelt until her kneecaps were hurting, and her forehead was bloody from the repeated kowtows. But in her hands, she still held on to the item that the empress wanted. Just like when she received her birthday present, she couldn't bear to dirty it. Whether it was something the young miss wanted, or something the young miss gave, she couldn't bear to dirty it. But she saw the noble consort walking over suddenly, reaching out to touch the wooden box. Xiao He immediately hugged it and stammered, "This belongs to the empress. You cannot, not touch it." The noble consort heard that and flew into a rage. She hated hearing that the most. So what if it belonged to the empress? Why couldn't it be touched? Even the empress man was now hers, what else could she not touch? The noble consort tore off Xiao He's cloak, exposing her frail body to the cold weather and snow. Then she forcibly tried to snatch the wooden box from her hands. Xiao He didn't give it up, so the noble consort called people to hold her down. Not feeling satisfied, she even viciously slapped Xiao He, leaving 2 bloody marks as her sharp nails scoured the maid's cheek. At this point, the filming stopped as the makeup artist quickly ran up to apply the blood effects for Lu Zhi Wei. The actress for the noble consort helped to put some heat packs under Lu Zhi Wei's clothes to prevent her from catching a cold. The mood lightened immediately. Lu Zhi Wei smiled at her, "Thank you." The actress smiled back, "You're welcome, acting with you is really comfortable." Lu Zhi Wei's acting was infectious, letting the people who acted with her get into character easily. It was because of this that director Li had taken the initiative to add her contact. After everything was prepared, the filming resumed. Everybody adjusted their emotions as the atmosphere started to heat up. After the noble consort slapped Xiao He, she complained that the maid had caused her hand to hurt. And she started to find reasons to humiliate Xiao He, asking her servants to slap her. Xiao He thought of her young miss and started struggling, shouting out with force, "You cannot hit me." Hitting her would be equivalent to hitting the empress and challenging her authority. She didn't do anything wrong, her young miss didn't do anything wrong, why did they have to suffer such humiliation? The noble consort had been spoiled by the emperor and was arrogant. She refused to listen, ordering her servants to slap Xiao He. Xiao He struggled and broke free, hugging the wooden box and running. It would be fine as long as she got back to young miss. It would be fine as long as she got back. But because she had knelt too long, she fell to the ground after a few steps and was dragged back by the servants. I want to see the Empress. She curled into a ball to protect the wooden box. This was the most perfect sentence she had ever said. The noble consort stood arrogantly and looked at her. Then Xiao He said, I want to see His Majesty. The noble consort suddenly laughed. Very well, this highness will bring you to see His Majesty. Lu Zhi Wei adjusted her emotions so that she could shed a single teardrop at this moment. Xiao He still didn't know how things could turn out like this. It was clearly fine in the past, it was clearly fine. She thought she would be saved by the emperor, but she didn't expect that the man who once said to her you can't die, you're the most important person to her. You have to live well. Would push her to her death with his own hands. The noble consort tearfully made up lies in front of the emperor. Holding on to her fingers, the emperor said tenderly, Qing has suffered. Turning his head, he ordered Xiao He to be beaten to death in a harsh voice. Xiao He's eyes went wide as she clumsily explained, I didn't. Nobody listened to her weak explanation. They let her cries fade to silence under the sound of the poles. The wooden hairpin on her head fell and she quickly reached out to grab it, before hugging both the hairpin and the box in her arms, protecting them. Lu Zhi Wei portrayed Xiao He's anguish beautifully. She looked at the most distinguished man under the sky, her eyes filled with despair and resentment. Even until she died, she never let go of the wooden hairpin. The man who had wanted her to live well previously, wanted her life today. Xiao He hugged the wooden box and collapsed in a pool of fresh, red blood, falling unconscious. The camera swept over her, and to make it look accurate, Lu Zhi Wei held her breath. It was only when the Empress, played by Wan Ci, came that she dared to take a breath. The scene wasn't over yet. When the Empress saw Xiao He's body, her breath stuck in her throat. She walked over and hugged the body in disbelief, her fingers trembling as she called out the maid's name again and again. The heavens and earth had become incomparably empty, only the howling wind answered her. Lu Zhi Wei closed her eyes and held her breath, not daring to move a muscle. But she could feel a teardrop land on her face, bringing a trace of warmth with it. Her waist was hugged as she was brought into Wan Ci's embrace. The wide sleeve covered her body, almost as if Wan Ci was giving her a signal that she could breathe again. So she breathed, playing as a dead person who could sneakily breathe. Wan Ci's heart-wrenching sobs landed in her ear, sounding more and more painful, more and more desolate. As she listened, her heart ached and she could almost imagine Wan Ci's expression. It must be heartbreaking. She had seen Wan Ci's crying scenes before, and that was why she knew it would be heartbreaking. Even if it was a single tear, Wan Ci had the ability to make someone want to protect her. This might be an innate ability. She lay in Wan Ci's arms, unmoving. Only her heart was following along with Wan Ci's emotions. She finally opened her eyes when the director shouted to cut, tears shining in them. Wan Ci looked at her, not knowing why she was crying. Then she suddenly saw Lu Zhi Wei raise a hand and gently wipe off her own tears before she smiled and said, Teacher Sang's acting is really good. Wan Ci paused, feeling a hint of warmth at the ends of her eyes where Lu Zhi Wei had touched her. Lu Zhi Wei climbed out of her embrace and wiped away her tears as she said, Your crying was so good that even a dead person like me couldn't bear to die after hearing it. I wanted to put on resurrection armor and come back to life. Wan Ci laughed, reaching out to sweep away the snow from her shoulders as she took a flower from her assistant behind her. Congratulations on finishing your scenes. Lu Zhi Wei looked at the flower dumbly, then rubbed her eyes and took it hesitantly. For me. Wan Ci nodded, for you. Lu Zhi Wei had a wow expression again. Turns out she could also receive flowers when she finished filming. Nobody had ever given her flowers before. They would just say congratulations on finishing your scenes and that would be it. Don't even mention flowers, an extra glance was already impossible. Ying Xize brought a big coat and walked over, draping it onto Lu Zhi Wei's shoulders to block out the wind. Here's your resurrection armor. Then he also gave her a flower. Congratulations, Ji, you've worked hard. Then it was the actress for the noble consort, then it was director Li. One flower after another, it was shocking and surprising. In the end, her tears finally fell. Thank you, everyone, I didn't think that I. Thank you. She was so touched that she became incoherent. She was a self-acknowledged optimistic person, not crying often. But she didn't think that faced with so much gentle kindness, her tears would still fall. It was clearly just an ordinary flower to celebrate the end of filming for her, but she was almost like someone who had just won an Oscar award, walking towards the peak of her life. Looking at her from the control room, Lao Wu couldn't help but sigh. Silly daughter, congratulations on finishing your scenes. I hope that in the future, you can also be worry-free and that your future will be smooth sailing and happy. At least you no longer have to live those quiet, unseen days anymore. It was a happy event, but Lu Zhi Wei ended up crying. Ying Xizer smiled helplessly and carried the flowers for her, giving her a tissue. Don't cry, our teacher Lu deserves it. Lu Zhi Wei heard Sang Wan Ci's sound of agreement from her side and she couldn't help but look toward her. Sang Wan Ci looked her in the eyes with a gentle gaze. You're very good, you deserve it. Lu Zhi Wei's vision went blurry with tears again. She smiled as she wiped away the tears, feeling bliss for the first time. Thank you. I'm very happy I could meet you all. I'm very happy. You all can see me. I'm looking forward to working with teacher Sang again in the future. Lu Zhi Wei said. Whether it was because of the mission, or whatever other reason, she was anticipating meeting Sang Wan Ci again. She also hoped everybody at the scene would be happy and healthy. She saw Sang Wan Ci move slowly, then ask a sentence she thought she would never hear. Lu Zhi Wei, do you still want my contact method? Lu Zhi Wei. What heavenly sound is this? Fortune really came like a typhoon, it's so sudden. She nodded frantically, I want it. Good heavens, she could finally complete the mission now, right? Sang Wan Ci looked for her assistant and her phone. In the past, she wasn't familiar with Lu Zhi Wei and she didn't know her sense of existence was low, so she naturally wouldn't give out her contact details. After interacting for so long and understanding Lu Zhi Wei's personality, she was willing to have a friend like her. The moment Lu Zhi Wei added Sang Wan Ci as a friend, the system rang out in her ear. System judgment, obtaining female lead Sang Wan Ci's personal contact details complete. Mission point +1. Please work hard, host. System reminder, the host has collected 5 mission points, and can draw a prize. It's here. She thought excitedly. The prize drawing I've been thinking of is finally here. Because she was too excited, she leapt forward and hugged Sang Wan Ci. Thank you, teacher Sang. Then she paused and carefully retracted her hands, looking guilty. Sorry, I was too happy. Truthfully, she still didn't dare to have too much physical contact with Sang Wan Ci earlier when the Empress was hugging Xiao He and crying. That was the longest and most physical contact they had so far. And then she was hugged by Sang Wan Ci. It's all right, you can hug me. Sang Wan Ci gently patted her back, a warm breath brushing past her ear, bringing the strength to calm down with it. Lu Zhi Wei's heart suddenly felt very warm in this instant. She reached out and encircled Wan Ci's waist with her arms. "Thank you." After that, Lu Zhi Wei immediately went back to her hotel and closed the door, preparing to draw the prize. Lao Wu attentively explained the rules to her. The prize pool is not determined, there are good and bad things in there. But as long as you can draw it, the system will make it happen. Even if you draw the prize that makes you insanely wealthy, we can make you insanely wealthy overnight. Of course, if you draw a bad prize, you need to accept it. It's a random draw after all. Hearing that, Lu Zhi Wei suddenly said, "Then hold on." Lao Wu. Lu Zhi Wei said, "This is a big matter. I'll go take a shower and bathe in incense before I do it." Lao Wu. She didn't need to do all that. After all, fate couldn't be changed. After Lu Zhi Wei showered, she went onto Weibo and reposted a bunch of images of koi fish for good luck, then prepared to draw the prize. Lao Wu gave her a bunch of numbers and let her pick one at random. She didn't rush to draw the prize. "You're certain you put the right to know the truth inside?" Lao Wu answered for the 8th time, "I'm sure." Lu Zhi Wei, "Really?" Lao Wu answered for the 9th time, "Really?" Lu Zhi Wei, "It's absolutely fair, right? You guys Wan Ci secretly switch the prizes behind the scenes." Lao Wu answered unamusedly for the 9th time, "We Wan Ci. The prizes were just a bunch of numbers to the system. What good was changing a bunch of numbers?" Lu Zhi Wei finally calmed down and started rubbing her hands. After thinking about it, she finally called out a number, 8. Lao Wu, "You're sure?" Lu Zhi Wei, "I'm sure, 8 is luckier." Lao Wu, "Okay, let me see what it is." "Wow, it's a good thing, you're one step closer to a Lamborghini." Lu Zhi Wei's eyes filled with excitement. "What is it? Is it money?" Except for money, she couldn't think of anything that would make her one step closer to a Lamborghini. Although she didn't draw the right to know everything, but having money was very good too. Who didn't like money? Lao Wu, look at it yourself, the feeling of surprise is stronger. Then he asked her to find a bag and empty it out, wait 10 seconds, then reach in and feel for it. What she felt would be the prize. Lu Zhi Wei did as she was told, reaching into the bag with unbridled excitement. It was thin. It was made of paper. Could it be a check? With this hope, she pulled it out cleanly to take a look. Lamborghini 5 discount voucher. Lu Zhi Wei. It's absolutely outrageous.